Nikkei Asia, 10th of October 2023, China avoids a battle with Hamas while the US calls for a more assertive posture. As Beijing sought to mediate fresh peace negotiations, commentators say that the conflict that has broken out between Israel and the Palestinian organization Hamas presents a challenging test for Beijing's ambitions to become a major diplomatic force in the Middle East. China promised to mediate talks between Israel and the Palestinians earlier this year. Chinese President Xi Jinping's three-part plan was the basis for a settlement widely publicized by official media in China. However, such ambitions may have been dashed for the time being by the recent eruption of extreme violence, which has presented China with fresh difficulties. Moritz Rudolf, a fellow at Yale Law School's Tsai China Center and China researcher, compared what they have to accomplish to a tightrope walk. They have an economic interest in the region's stability and have increased their political role. Asia and other nations swiftly denounced the massacre of people following Hamas's lethal surprise strike on Saturday, which involved thousands of missiles fired, fighters entering Israeli neighborhoods, and the capture and return of prisoners to Gaza. According to local sources, over 900 people have died in Israel, while a wave of retaliatory airstrikes on Gaza has killed almost 700 Palestinians. In contrast to the United States, India, Japan, and other nations that have firmly endorsed Israel, the Chinese government has remained impartial. In response to the Hamas attack on Saturday, Beijing issued an official statement urging an immediate ceasefire and restating its support for a two-state solution involving an independent state of Palestine to resolve the conflict. Hamas was not denounced. John June, China's permanent representative to the UN, expressed concern over an escalation later on Sunday. Prior to an emergency closed-door security conference, Zhang told reporters that what matters is to stop the situation from getting worse and from killing civilians. He emphasized, "We condemn all attacks against civilians." No public remarks have been made by President Xi yet. China and Palestinian leaders have long maintained tight diplomatic relations. Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, visited China for the seventh time this year during his nearly two-decade tenure. However, China has also recently strengthened its ties with Israel, contributing to its thriving technological sector and infrastructure. Beijing's first subdued response to the violence was not lost on anyone. On Sunday, a senior official at the Israeli embassy in Beijing, Yuval Wax, stated that his nation anticipated a more forceful reaction from the second-largest economy in the world. Wax told reporters that now was not the time to advocate for a two-state solution while people were being killed and mutilated in the streets. "We believe that China as a superpower in this world, should have taken a stronger stand." However, Beijing seems to be more at ease acting as a mediator. China mediated talks in March between Iran and Saudi Arabia, two fierce enemies, which allowed for a diplomatic reconciliation. Analysts viewed this as a challenge to U.S. dominance in the area. China presented its plan in June to mediate a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. However, it did so by putting itself in a precarious situation that has troubled the U.S. and other powers for many years. Even though Israel and the Palestinians agreed to a peace roadmap when they signed the Oslo Accords in September 1993, unfruitful talks for a two-state solution have continued hostilities and violence. Since 2014, negotiations have been at a standstill, and with a recent attack by Hamas and the right-wing coalition led by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, any chance of a resolution seems even slimmer. Some analysts contend that Beijing's lack of response to Hamas raises questions about its capacity to achieve its regional goals. Wan T-Sung, a political scientist specializing in China at the Australian National University, said that China is still unwilling to call Hamas directly and instead tried to refer to them as combatants using ambiguous language. This is because China doesn't want to be perceived as betraying its friends in the developing world, especially when that friend is fighting a significant ally of the United States, Israel. The dispute may make China's already strained ties with the United States much more difficult. Leader of the U.S. Senate Chuck Schumer met with President Xi on Monday while on a visit from a bipartisan legislative group. Schumer voiced his dissatisfaction at China's lack of pro-Israel sentiment. "I urge you and the Chinese people to stand with the Israeli people and condemn the cowardly and vicious attacks," Tsai said Schumer. After Schumer's visit, China's foreign ministry emphasized that the most urgent task now is to reach a ceasefire and restore peace, and that it condemns all violence and attacks on civilians. In a letter praising Tsai, the U.S. senator claimed responsibility. "I specifically requested that they bolster their assertion. They carried out." However, the Chinese official outlet Global Times released a story that same day denouncing U.S. backing for Israel and claiming it would further intensify the crisis. Tian Wenlin, a research fellow at the China Institutes of Contemporary International Relations, was quoted as saying that if the U.S. wants peace, it should take actions to calm down the situation instead of giving one-sided support to Israel. Israel already has a more significant military might than Palestine. The narrative implied that Schumer's pressure is a component of an American effort to morally abduct China. For the time being, Yale's Rudolf said that China would probably adopt a more cautious strategy that promotes humanity and people without taking a side. He stated that China's desire to avoid becoming embroiled in this conflict is crucial. "At some point, when great powers are to meet and to talk about this situation, China just wants to have a seat at the table, and the difference now is that they're taking it more seriously."